Hello and welcome back to El Partido, yet another Spanish football podcast. I'm your host, Nick Belfort, this evening, and I'm delighted to say I'm being joined by Matt Harrison, subbing in for Paul, who unfortunately can't be with us today. But my man in Marbella, my fellow Malaguista, he is with me. Are you okay, Matt?
Yeah, very good, very good. I'm looking forward to this weekend because, as you know, I've wanted to go to Huelva for a long time to see the oldest football club in Spain, and I will be doing that this weekend. So I'm very excited about that trip.
Oh, absolutely. That is very much on my bucket list to go and visit one day, go and see the grandfather of Spanish football, as they say. But I tell you what, Matt, enough about you, because I get to talk to you all the time. I never get to speak to the gentleman who's currently sat below me on the screen, and that is the one and only Guillem Balagué. I thank you so much for joining us, Guillem. It is an honour.
My pleasure, Nick and Matt. It is, I think it's going to be an honor for the few minutes that we spoke off camera to talk to you, because you're part of what we all built together those few years back and now converted into creators. It's great to see.
Yeah, definitely. A lot of people ask me about, why El Partido, why focus on, nostalgia and history in football. And I think it comes in two parts. One is I'm not against modern football, but I do have a rose-tinted view of how football used to be played, and maybe because I'm now in my mid-30s, that encapsulates itself in a podcast form. But the other part is, as Matt will agree, Revista de La Liga, that introduction to Spanish football when I was around, must have been 10 to 12 years old, getting Sky TV for the first time and watching something that wasn't Blackpool or Manchester United or Arsenal was so refreshing. And, bringing that knowledge and that interest to the UK, that must have been of such a big thing for you to do, Guillem, back then.
Oof, we could do a whole hour or more on Revista de La Liga, the effects of Revista, the amount of stories I heard throughout the years, similar to yours. Do you know who else fell in love with the Spanish football at that time? Trent Alexander-Arnold, Marcus Rashford, Jude Bellingham. These are the kids that watch Revista. In fact, I think in Jude Bellingham's documentary, you get a clip of him watching Revista as a kid with his brother, because it was a window into another world, and that was the intention from the beginning. People wouldn't remember, but I started doing Spanish football for Sky in 1997, and nobody really was watching it at the time. I think the big jump was possibly when David Beckham came to Real Madrid, and then little by little would transform what it was a 2-hour show with 15 minutes edits of games. Who does that anymore? Into an hour show called Revista, which used to be Mondays, and then we'll move to Tuesdays, Mondays again, and with sections like Guapa, about a move that was a nice flick or nice goal. That I don't know if you know, but that Guapa sound was from Roberto Martinez, of course, who's now the manager of Portugal, and we had so many people that came over. Fabio Capello, Rafa Benitez, Cesc Fabregas. I actually went to Sarajevo last week, and Mateo Crankia comes over and says, "You don't remember me?" Says, he's got more hair now and like white hair. Says, "No, the player." What, the player? You actually took me to Revista, first and last time I did television in my life. I had a great time, by the way. I said, "Oh yeah, of course you did." I got anybody that I could. That was my part of my role, to get people into the show. And it was relatively easy because they all loved what we were doing with Spanish football. We have to thank Sky Sports for all those years. Remember, we started in 97 and I finished the last Revista show was 2017. So it was all those years of influencing you, telling you stories, bringing you people, and the other side of football, if you like to give it 3 dimension.
Yeah, it's interesting that you mentioned some of the players that are now playing in Spain and that being an influence for it. I know, like I say, us as viewers, embraced Spanish football at the time when, Spanish football was also embracing us, some might say. We had an influx of Spanish football stars, Xabi Alonso, Luis Garcia, famously at Liverpool, Mikel Arteta, etc. So, it was kind of like just a really good period of time to have them both together. And Matt, I know that you live in Spain now, so you get to live and breathe dream, and you go to all sorts of places in Spain. That must have been a massive part of you as well, and sort of like your aspirations to go everywhere.
Yeah, like obviously I do a podcast with my brother Mark, who is 7 years older than me, and his sort of like when he was a teenager in the 90s, he sort of grew up around James Richardson and Football Italia, and that TV show is mythologized, and I sort of remember it. I remember it being there, but obviously I was perhaps a little bit too young to engage with it. So I also say Revista is sort of our generation's Football Italia in a way, where it was like, obviously you had people like Guillem and Graham Hunter and this cast of footballers and managers that they got on the show. So you had that expertise, and it was like really interesting. And I think when me and you did the Los Boyos, my podcast episode with Graham Hunter, I sort of joked on that saying, it gave us the opportunity to go in the school playground and be like sort of little football hipsters, like we're talking about Spanish football. But as well as that expertise, it was a little bit like Football Italia, where it had that sort of light-hearted side of it, like Guillem said, with the guapa and, any mention of Roberto Martinez, Guillem, I love. I'm a Swansea City fan, so he is my favourite ever football manager for what he did to Swansea City. So I'm glad we got a mention of Roberto Martinez in early doors as well.
Yeah, because I think that's the main difference for Revista for me. All those points you just made, Matt. But it was the characters, it was the personality, and it whenever you switched it on, it was like you were just sitting back down in the bar or the taberna and just talking with your mates or listening to your mates, and the same things that you guys do on that show. I kid you not, is the same things I do with my friends when I go and meet up with them. And we're all dads now, and we're all talking about, like say Jude Bellingham, or whether it's, focusing on what's gone wrong at Valencia. It kind of, life replicating art, I would say. And I suppose that the point I'm going to try and get to is that we're kind of losing that a little bit now, aren't we? We're kind of losing that opportunity where, don't get me wrong, it's going to be ironic me saying this on a podcast where content creation is king, but we're moving away from that sort of like studio analyst, that personality, into something that we don't get anymore. And obviously La Liga this year, I know obviously you do a great job on Premier Sports when they have games on there, but we've kind of lost that element to it under no coverage, no analysis, no show this year, which I think is such a massive shame for La Liga, because you did such a good job, and others did such a good job in getting into such a place internationally.
Yeah, it is a shame that this doesn't work like that, but content has changed. We were the only place where you could hear all those things that we were telling you. We broke news. So I knew something on a Saturday, but I had to keep it until the Tuesday because it will be opening Revista. And I could do that because there was nobody else breaking stories about transfers. And we broke really big stories. Cristiano Ronaldo to Real Madrid being the biggest one. And for 6 months, I got stick from absolutely everyone, including Sir Alex Ferguson, in 2 or 3 press conferences. But I knew it was happening. And that was the place to say it. There was nobody else. Where would you put it? So, but now we've changed. Now we've gone to a different place where everybody is not just the authority telling you how it works. Now you don't want to hear that. You yourselves have got your own podcast. But, I would say, how is it that you got a podcast when it's me spending millions of hours talking to managers, players, etc., and you don't? But it doesn't matter anymore. You have an opinion. You create something that for you is interesting. You will have an audience, which could be a different one, that it will be an audience in my own YouTube channel. It's not a problem. It's how it works now. But it is true that in the Anglo-Saxon world, obviously not so much in Spain, but there is a lack of content. We did the first few games for Premier Sports, preview of it, and then post and etc. And people appreciated that. But at the same time, how much value you get by doing that. This is what the television channels will be asking. Can you not get that information somewhere else? And yes, you can by grabbing here and there, listen to your podcasts. So the whole concept has changed. Revista died, and it cannot be resuscitated. It's a different era. It's a different time. It's a program of its time, and it's remembered lovingly because at that time, as I said, it was people that lived football inside out, that lived in football in different formats, telling you how it works. But along the way, and already at the end of Revista was already happening. What was important to people, this is audience and broadcasters even, wasn't so much what I was saying, but what the comments were saying on what I was saying. So that the whole thing has been transformed, and I completely accept it. I adapted. My key as a professional has always been to adapt to whatever comes, and I created Revista, but at the same time, I knew that I had to have a web page. When Twitter came about, I was one of the early ones to do that. I started a podcast early. I always go a little bit by intuition, but also by seeing the trends and move into different spheres. And because I am I'm the ultimate freelancer. I'm not really. I've got 3 contracts, but I live like a freelancer. Like, the contract's gonna finish next month, and that's something I guess I've got from my parents, who they were both immigrants, and I'm an immigrant as well in the UK. I believe half and half, Spain and the UK. When I have all that, I just try to look for the next thing, and Revista is left there, a place where we can sit down now and talk about it with a lot of love.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that one, you, Matt, in terms of, there has been much made about the lack of, maybe coverage around the games as they happen. But, there are so many places where you can get, the information, the reviews, the previews, the, to quote one of my ones, the Rincon Culturals and the question and answers. So I suppose it is there. I'm just maybe getting to an age where I struggle to track it, and I want it on channel 401 on a Friday evening, and that'd be perfect.
Who watches television, Nick, these days? Who watches television? But now how people consume things is that, well, the game is on, they're on the phones, or it's how it works. So you have to be in that sphere as well, and you are, because you're doing, you're on YouTube and everything else. So it's the way to see the game now. Nobody sits down 90 minutes to watch it. Nobody. Not many people do watch 90 minutes in a go of a football game. And who watches the first hour? There are really good programs out there. What we're doing for Champions League with CBS is really adds to the product, no doubt about it. Could we do the same with La Liga in the UK? Not only I'm convinced, I've told Javier Tebas that we should. So because it works differently in the UK and in the Anglo-Saxon world, you have to decorate the game with things. You are used to that because everybody else does it. You don't do it, you fall behind. But Javier thinks that things are going in a different way. La Liga TV has disappeared, but it may come up in a different format. Meanwhile, you can still get 2 hours of commentary in English, which has got a lot of information during the games, done by myself, by Sid Lowe, Graham, etc. So we're still around, and the content is there for you to grab. You just have to trust certain labels, names, and that information will come to you.
Yeah, I would 100% agree on that, and I keep to that cause. Keep the hotline to Javier to say, let's just get a bit of that bells and whistles maybe around, maybe just for us in the UK, because we do like that kind of stuff, don't we, Matt? To be fair, but I think even if we had like a little build up around it would be great. But like you say, it has moved on, and I'm just being an old man and complaining nowadays, because it is still very, very good to watch.
Just quickly though, Nick, obviously I pick up on this stuff from the WhatsApp groups I'm in, and obviously we have like a Malaga fan one where I see you guys worrying about how you're going to watch the Malaga games this season. So I pick up from it there, and you say about the bells and whistles, where like the big culture shock to me from a football perspective when I moved to Spain is like the coverage of football is like wall to wall. Like, there's 4 newspapers every day. They're sports newspapers ostensibly, but they're football newspapers, aren't they? And there's radio shows, all these newspapers have pretty much daily talk shows, which are then made into podcasts. So yeah, and also it's quite good for me to help me learn Spanish. But it's crazy the amount of content actually on the ground in Spain, I would say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And every newspaper has got a version in English, and in
Yeah,
some
true.
cases in other languages. So yeah, again, the newspapers took a while. The AS, the Marcas, the Sports, Mundo Deportivos, Superdeporte took a while to realize where the audience was and that they should look beyond Spain. But now they are, and as I said, you can go and find information. Yes.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, like you mentioned before we started going, we could talk an hour about Revista de La Liga, but there are a couple of other things that we definitely want to pick your brains about. The first one being sort of an ambitious tweet from myself when I was scrolling through Twitter, and I saw you promoting one of your former books about the biography of Diego Maradona. And I never thought that would turn into managing to get you as a guest on our podcast game. So I do, really, really thank you for responding to us. As we were talking about, Maradona is such a, I think he's a nostalgia person's dream, isn't he? Because we do look fondly back at Diego Maradona in every walk of his life. I suppose the first question I want to ask you, Guillem, is, what inspired you to write such an extensive biography about Diego? And how did you develop and structure it so it became sort of a standout amongst, so many other, books, blogs, literature? About Diego Maradona.
It's nice that you say that. I tried to do the first thing is to look at Maradona from the eyes of somebody that lives in 2023. So not without judging, because I don't judge any of the subjects I investigate and think of and talk to and relate to. But I wanted to see what happens if you look at Maradona's time and the opinion of people that had at the time, or the reaction of football to some of the things he was doing. If you look at it with today's eyes, and oh my God, I discovered the hardship of him being in Barcelona, how the civil world in Barcelona did not accept that somebody from South America could walk around like he owned the place. Didn't accept that. How him having a group of people that this is what he did all his life, lost Argentinians that found themselves in Barcelona, and all of a sudden Maradona was a magnet, and when he got them under his wing, he looked after them, and that was called the clan, almost like saying, look at that sect of people that follows Maradona. There was no respect whatsoever for those people that had a story, why they were there, why they were looking after Diego, why Diego needed them to recreate a little Buenos Aires. So the relationship that he had with women, what he did with Claudia was not right at all. How she had to hide for 10 years her boyfriend. And when he found out about it, went on television and tried to, do a character assassination of both, just because she was in love with somebody else when they separated. How football didn't treat him as an ill person and as an addicted person, but treating him as a drug addict that deserved to be punished. And that's what they did, punish him, but not look after him at all. And you can see the difference on that now. He was the first one to have a physical coach. He knew that was necessary to individualize coaching. He was the first one to have a press officer. He knew that the message was important. The first one to challenge UEFA and FIFA and say that they were corrupt, and we did not believe him. The first one to try a trade union of players didn't happen at that time, but he knew that the players had to defend themselves. Extraordinary, incredible, that he carried on his shoulders so much, and that he ended up the way he ended up. So he died while I was writing it, so it wasn't on the back of sadly passing away. What a story! What a story! In fact, one of my dreams, I got my cave where I hide in the summer is the Edinburgh Festival, Fringe Festival, the theatre festival and comedy festival. and I always wanted to have a play there. And I think I'm working on, in a couple of summers, to have a play on Maradona based in the book. And it'd be so difficult to choose the stories, so difficult. But I hope to see you there if that happens.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I will definitely be there. Not just because Edinburgh is such a beautiful and wonderful place to go visit. I love it up there, but also to see that would be, you know, very, very interesting. And like you say, how you explore such a complex figure, you know, who, like you say, when you do mention it that way, he was carrying the weight, not just the burden of stardom, but maybe of kind of like a bit of an evolution of football at a time when football was evolving. Because, you know, even when he came to Barcelona, and at that time Barcelona were looking for a savior, as you described it in the book, he joined Spanish football at a time when it was still quite rough and tumble, wasn't it? It wasn't necessarily the technical game that we see now, and he was this, you know, dazzling dribbler, a man who had, you know, this sense of artistry, and, you know, was showing brilliance, you know, back in you know, South America and at the 1982 World Cup. So it kind of felt like everything was going to happen at once for him, but it didn't really click that way, really, with him in Barcelona, did it? Because it wasn't the match made in heaven that we kind of look back and think it was sometimes.
No, it wasn't. It wasn't at all. He gave an interview on the plane that was taken into Napoli, saying, you know, people haven't respected me here. They haven't understood Maradona, and he was right. They just didn't want to understand him. And this was a country that wasn't a winning country by any means as a football nation. So, you know, you get the best player in the world, and obviously he was, you know, he was injured. He had an illness that stopped him being at his best. But it was kind of at the end, and you know how football clubs do this, especially Barcelona and Real Madrid. When they want somebody out, they transform the story, they change the narrative, they use the media to actually say, we don't want him. Who wants Maradona anyway? We got a lot of money for him, blah, blah, blah. And that's what happened. At the end, people were clapping him leaving. It makes no sense, but because that was an era where it was easier to manipulate the audience, and they all turned against Diego. There was, I mentioned in the book, there was a bunch of fans that stayed when Barcelona trained in the pitch next to the Camp Nou. They called them the Morenos, I think, because they were always were under the sun. So Morenos mean suntanned, and they were always suntanned. And these were people paid by the club that will wait for the players, watch training, because it was possible. You were just passing by the street, you will stay and watch Johan Cruyff train or whatever. And when the club said, we now don't want this player, you have to go against him, he will be booed on the way from the training pitch to the car, or, you know, people will talk, would make a lot of noise against him or whatever. So that was the level, has always been the level of clubs manipulating the story, and they did that with Diego. It was a time, as you say, where players weren't respected. That was another battle that he fought, where he felt that the artists should be respected, and little by little, that noise just became red cards for, you know, tackles from behind and stuff like that. But in some cases at that time, that wasn't the done thing, obviously. So it was a missed opportunity. It was a Barcelona that didn't fully get Diego. Bernd Schuster was there, didn't get Bernd Schuster either. And even though they won things, they didn't make a big impact in the European scene.
Yeah, and also as well, they even got in Cesar Menotti as manager, who is this manager. Obviously, he won the 1978 World Cup with Argentina, which is, again, quite a controversial subject. So we could do a whole podcast on that. But he is like a manager that's renowned for being quite liberal, we'll say, and he was a bit of a sort of hippie-ish guy. And, you know, I'm sort of generalizing quite a lot there, but
a philosopher. While you finish the question, I'm just going to put the light on because it's becoming very dark very quickly. So give me a second. Just talk among yourselves.
I will talk about Menotti some more while you put the light on. But Menotti was obviously this sort of free, you know, let the players do what they want sort of manager, and even to the extent where he came up with this excuse, didn't he, that Barcelona were now going to train in the afternoon because of
That's bad, isn't it?
biorhythms.
Sorry.
And obviously, it was nothing to do with biorhythms. It was because Maradona was going out in the night and didn't want to train in the morning. And I think there's even reports that quite enjoyed the Argentinian nightlife as well. I'm sorry, the Barcelona nightlife as well. But even by the end, Menotti had, supposedly turned against him, I believe, and sort of said, this club will win nothing with this guy as its sort of talismanic person at the club. And even he was like, yeah, I've had enough of Diego. And Menotti is like this Argentinian symbol of like fun football, I guess.
No, it wasn't so much that. Menotti left, but he tried to leave a foundation that, again, the club wasn't ready to have, with a different way of training. Yeah, you're right about the first one to say that, if you play at night, you should be training at night. Yeah, right. But no, the relationship was good between Cesar Luis Menotti and Diego. Udo Lattek and Diego wasn't so great. This is the German manager that was before Menotti, because it was all about the physique, and wow, football has changed so much. You see them train then and now, and it's a different world. And specifically him, who needed individualized training because he was shaped differently than everybody else, required different physical attributes, but everybody trained the same way. It's just, again, there was a lot of things to go against that combination, that group of talented players that could have done much better if, for instance, Maradona hadn't been injured, and if Maradona had been respected. Hence, building a team for a longer time than 2 years. But that wasn't even the best Maradona. I think for me, the Maradona peaks between 85 and 87. That is the best Maradona. Yeah. Up till then, remember, he gets sent off in the World Cup in 82. Barcelona doesn't fully work. Then he goes and wins the Scudetto. 85 and 87 is the period where he lives life to the full. And then he gets to a point where drugs don't allow him to perform at the best level. He becomes inconsistent, still glimpses of quality, and wins another Scudetto. But 85, 87, that was the best Maradona, including the World Cup, of course. After that, before that, he was climbing. After that, it was a decline. That's why when everybody asks, Diego or Leo, the answer is easy, because Leo was for 15 years, 16 years now, at the top of his game all the time. And Diego was only 2 years. Now, I did say before Qatar, I have to add to this conversation that in terms of who is better, Diego or Messi, that Leo hadn't picked at the level that Diego had. Diego had moments, semifinals against Belgium, just moments that it was like, oh my God, until Qatar. And Messi also reached that level. So there's no doubt in my eyes who is the best. There is enough evidence there, but I still will not convince those that are 60 or 70 or 50, because they will have in their minds Diego and what Diego did to him.
Apart from you've said which one you think is the better footballer. To shout out to another one of your books, you did write a biography on Messi. Which did you have more fun writing, the Maradona or Messi one? Because I imagine there was a few more wild stories in the Maradona one, but was it perhaps more fun digging to find out about Messi? Because obviously he's a little bit more reserved, we'll say.
Yeah, I worked so hard on the Messi one that the Messi family, at the end of the process, allowed me to call it authorized book, and it's the only authorized book that is out there. So for that, I'm eternally grateful, because I've become the official biographer of Messi. But it was a book done as he was moving on, as he was succeeding. You have to go back to understand why he reacts the way he reacts, what football means to him, and then all of a sudden, after the first 2 updates, he has kids, and then you have to talk about having kids. So it's in the English version, it's 750 pages, I think. In the Spanish version, I tried to do shorten it to 350 because I thought it was getting too big. But the English publisher says, don't touch it. People are still buying it. And by the way, it's like a world in motion. It's a book in motion. He hasn't fully finished yet. But in any case, that was obviously somebody and the people around him that I was very close to. I became like the presenter of like 8 or 9 commercial events with him. So we sold razors, we sold phones, we sold a bunch of other things, which allows you to, allows you to know him closely. So I had that in favor. In the case of Diego, I also presented an event with him, and we met in different occasions. I wouldn't call myself a friend of his, but we know each other. We knew each other, and but there's so much documentation, videos. I mean, there's no other player in the history of the game that has got more documents about him, documentaries, books, films, songs, all kinds. To actually collect that and make sense of it, I needed, as you said from the beginning, I needed to find a different angle. And that was, all right, let's look back from today's eyes and let's see what we found. And what we found was a marvelous stories. Interestingly enough, for those that like books, there were 2 chapters that I couldn't put in the English section that was in Spanish, because it didn't make sense in English. It was so far-fetched. It was so crazy. It's like people won't believe it. So I replaced it by something else more logical, more, trying to understand who Maradona was.
Anglo-Saxon.
Yeah. Imagine some of the stuff, honestly. And I could have written a whole encyclopedia on him, but I'm very, very happy with the book. It's very easily readable. It's got a lot of literature, context, sociology, a lot of psychology, what he did. And as I said, looking back was a learning experience.
No, I 100% agree with that. And to be fair, Maradona's time in Spain, was always maybe looked on quite fondly. But reading the book, you find out that it's maybe a bit more complex than that. Especially with the other stints he did. Obviously, he's well known for going to play in Seville. Matt, obviously, you brought to my attention his day in Granada. You wrote that for our magazine, the El Día de los Tres Maradona. So it was quite interesting for him to come back to Spain for that one season, wasn't it, Guillem? In terms of, he'd come back off the drugs ban in Italy. He obviously, as you've already mentioned, wasn't at his peak, but the celebrity was still there, and the pull of Maradona was still there, wasn't it?
Absolutely, and the stories that the players tell you, Monchi included. Monchi, the famous Monchi, played in that team, and how would, at the end of a game, they will all get into Maradona's room. Somebody will bring some brandy, some rum, some coke, and they will just sit around him and listen to him talking stories about his time with Argentina, with Newell's, with Napoli, and every day was a different story. Training wasn't great. He obviously, his priority was to get fit to the games. He did a big effort because wanted to be ready for the World Cup. But Monchi told me a story of how one day they went for a walk. Come with me, Monchi. And started walking around. And then he realized that Monchi was wearing a false watch, a false Rolex. What are you doing that for? Oh, I was in whatever I was. And then I bought one for me, one for my wife. And they look good anyway, so whatever. So the week after training, Maradona called Monchi, where this is going. Monchi, yeah, I've got a present for you, and gave him a proper Rolex, one for you, one for your wife.
Oh, wow.
So that was Diego. Diego was very, very generous. These, cases of an old lady that I also explained in the book, coming after training, Diego, shouting, Diego. She didn't finish until Diego come over at the fence, listened to her, come back, and then he said to his agent who was there, just give her 2,000 euros or whatever it was. Wouldn't have been euros. Why? Just give us some money, and that will be it. So he was generous with his people, loyal to his people, and he went to friendlies to raise money for causes that he believed in, and it was a completely special character. But those are the disruptors, the ones that get things moving on, that they push boundaries, and on the back of it, the world is better and football is better.
Absolutely. And he got to experience. He got to experience the other side of Argentinian football management philosophy again, because he had the sort of anti-Menotti, didn't he? In Carlos Bilardo, who obviously was the 1986 Argentine World Cup winning manager as well. So he got both sides of the Argentinian manager spectrum. Is he?
Both successful, and it's an interesting debate. Now the debate has transformed into positional, organized football, Pep Guardiola style, or let's not go there because that's too complicated and players become robots. Which is that those debates. Whoever proclaims those debates, deep down, they're missing on what's happening. They're missing that where football is now. Positional football, roles, obligations. That's what football is now, and it's interesting to see the likes of Elche. Another Sarabia, who I spoke to today for a podcast, how he, is at the forefront of all that. So he's Unai Emery, Mikel Arteta, Enzo Maresca, obviously Pep Guardiola, all those that have been brought up in Pep Guardiola's style, but also in the Spanish football culture, who are now spreading the word all over. And football has gone away from, let's be defensive and then let's counterattack and all that. You have to be much more flexible. You have to have so much more as a player and as a team. And the original debate of that was the Menotti versus Bilardo, which gave us a lot of fun. But it was more two ways of understanding life that really understanding football. One, the artist; the other one, the
militant.
Yeah.
Interesting that we've just heard stories about Monchi. We've just heard the name Unai Emery being mentioned. We've spoken about Diego Maradona there being a fantastic book. And if you go back and read it, it is sensational to go over. Your new book, Guillem, which is coming out, I believe, is it out now? Is it coming out this month?
It's out, yeah. It was out on the 25th of September. There will be a presentation on the 15th of October. If you are in Birmingham at the Wheaton Arms, we'll do a big show.
I love the Wheaton Arms. It's one of my favourite away pubs.
It's great. It's really great. Next to
when I used to go watch Swansea play at Villa Park, that's where we always used to go.
Yeah, it's the place to go. A stone throw or thrown stone or whatever the expression is from Villa Park. So we'll be there. The 300 or 400 that have been buying tickets will be there, just doing a little bit of a Aston Villa fan with former players like Ian Taylor and Andy Townsend and Alan McAnally and James Chester and Stan Petrov, some people from the club, and generally trying to give a picture of, again, a three-dimensional picture of what the club is. And yeah, Rise of the Villains came out on 25th of September, I think it was. And I'm very, very proud of it. It's perhaps out of all the books, I counted them yesterday. I think I've put on 11 now, crazily enough. It's the one where I spent the longest on, that I gone the deepest, and the access has been phenomenal. And it was a massive responsibility to use that access to actually tell a story. And I think I've told two stories. The story of Unai is the first part of the book. Again, very interesting, coming from the Basque Country. Why so many Basque managers are so good. That's also an interesting conclusion. And then his time at Sevilla, his time at PSG, Arsenal, how he changed everything just before he went to Villarreal, and he succeeded again. And that's the basis, again, the positional football that in which he's succeeding in Aston Villa. And the second part is a picture, a 360-degree look at the club behind the scenes. So for those that read it, it will be very, very difficult after reading it to go and say, after two bad results, get rid of the manager, get rid of everyone, because you will realize how much work is going on in there, the real situation of the club. And generally, because you start falling for the people that are there, you don't want them to fail, you want them to succeed. So that's the book, and at the moment it's going well, and I just hope that people in a time like with the start of the season that wasn't so great, now 3 victories, that's perhaps another look, but it will be an up and down season, that they use the book as a reference for those things that I'm saying, that there is a lot going on back there, and they all doing it with the best intentions. And to me, it's like the vanguard of football. You see it, the work on individual coaching, the man management, tactics, analysis. It's just incredible what happens there.
Yeah, because I think, when we think of Unai Emery especially, and, to the likes of ourselves, Matt, we probably knew about, Unai Emery with his time with Sevilla and such, and obviously we sort of go to PSG, but most people will recognise him from his time at Arsenal and having, what people might call that impossible job of replacing someone who has been ultimately part of the furniture. Arsene Wenger in charge for decades. Same with David Moyes and Ferguson, maybe. So we see the success that he has. We see how he thinks. We see what he's doing with Aston Villa now. Was it kind of like maybe just wrong place, wrong time for Unai Emery at Arsenal? Do you reckon he could have taken them a little bit further if he had more time, or was it his destiny to maybe take this route back into Premier League football?
You already mentioned the big words, Arsene Wenger. It was post-Arsene Wenger era where players that didn't deserve longer contracts had longer contracts, where some of the people inside the camp, like Ozil, worked against the manager, and Ozil was very powerful at the time, where Unai wasn't protected, looked after, but like he is now by every single level, from ownership to director of football to the people around him. He didn't have enough people. Of his own people that thought like him. So that project, in that shape, it was always going to fail. Considering that in the post-Wenger era, the team didn't collapse because they finished 5th, and they got into the Europa League final. But that was also the beginning of the new era that we're living now, where 2 defeats is enough for a huge amount of people to come out with massive conclusions. 2 defeats, 1 draw, 2 draws, and people want the managers out. It's just I'm trying to be close to every generation in football, just to understand how people think, how to direct, how to talk to them, what to learn from them. But that bit, I just don't fully get. The managers are telling you everywhere, everything is a process. It requires time. You need time to adapt to a new podcast, to a new job, to a new city, to a new country. And nobody's giving time anymore. And what's after that? So if after 5 results that are not great, people want Enzo Maresca out, having won the Club World Cup, what's next? After 1 game? New manager, he gets given 1 game, and after that, if he doesn't do it well, it's happening at Forest. All of a sudden, Angie has to go. What? Do you know how much it requires? And again, reading a book like this, instead of just only listening to podcasts, say, or YouTube or Instagram or TikTok, reading a book, it allows you to go deeply into what shapes a squad, a team, a player, a manager. It requires a lot of time. It's not always the right place at right time, as it happened with Unai at Arsenal. But these managers are really well prepared. You need to give them time. And I don't understand the meaning of creating a toxic atmosphere so you can say we got rid of the manager. Because West Ham has been doing that for a while. There's a toxic atmosphere there, and the fans seem to be having a well of a time. I know they don't, but a well of a time judging the managers. And perhaps that's not where the fault is. Perhaps there are other problems. Perhaps, like a Manchester United, it has to do with the culture. Perhaps there's a lot of things that fans don't understand, don't want to understand, or don't want to be part of the judgment. And I find it's a bit of a disturbing trend where you, at least places like this, like here, you look back and you realize that, with time things happen, with the right energy, things happen. With the right mixture of people, things happen. Normally positive things. And by the way, if it doesn't, that's also part of life. If you allow somebody to create something and then you don't like the shape of it after a year, 2 years, 3 years, okay, time to move on. If you don't win anything 1 year, it's not the end of the world. There will be another year. Or maybe it will never happen. It's a game. It's possible. I thought I'll never see Spain win the World Cup, and now I see the star in Matt's shirt, and I'm thinking, wow, it did happen. But it could have been that it doesn't happen, and it's not the end of the world. Perhaps people are taking football a little bit too seriously these days.
Yeah, and I think where you speak about Unai Emery and Aston Villa and how they build, things around him, the effort it obviously took to get him to Aston Villa from Villarreal. Matt, I don't know about you, but I was, when I heard the news at the time, was quite shocked considering the success he had at Villarreal, winning the Europa League. Everyone has the same cliche, town of 50,000, so I won't delve too much into that. But, he was also building something at Villarreal, maybe something that could go on and challenge, the top 2-3, dare I say. And then all of a sudden he is the Aston Villa manager at a time when, on the back of Steven Gerrard, you're thinking, is that the right move for Unai Emery? Is that smart from him? It seems like a bit of a gamble. Ultimately a gamble that's paid off because he has transformed Aston Villa, along with everybody else that works with him, into a force in the Premier League now, and a European force at that, when they are playing in Europe as well, aren't they?
Yeah,
but I was going to say, I'll tell you another story. The story of somebody that at Villarreal, having with the Ukraine crisis and the owner of Villarreal losing money with his companies, they weren't able to match the ambition of Unai, and everybody knew that. So when Villarreal was talking about, we'll talk about your future soon, and he was saying, no, tell me now. What is it that we can do at Villarreal? Because if it is this, I'm with you. If it isn't, all right, I may have to go somewhere else because I want to be there. And the answer was, no, we cannot. It's not possible to take the success semifinals of the Champions League into another semifinals in the Champions League because the money is not there. So that was what was at the background. But the relationship is great between him and the owners of Villarreal. When Newcastle came, he said no. He didn't like that there were so many stories in the media. Didn't like how Newcastle dealt with the whole thing. But when Aston Villa came in, it's like, okay, he heard the ambition of the owners. He knew the limitations. But there was so much room for improvement for a club that's so historic that he thought, yeah, this could be the one that takes me back to the Premier League, which of course was unfinished business there.
Yeah, that was literally the phrase I was going to use. That I think when that opportunity arose, that it was that unfinished business. And I think, again, perhaps you obviously understand how he works much better than me, Guillem, but I always get the impression with him that he is, it sounds a really obvious thing to say about a football manager. He is a coach. He does seem to get players better, because the one that always stands out to me in the last few years that I always say, like we were just talking about, the Witten Arms and me going to watch Swansea at Villa Park. I remember when Aston Villa were in the Championship and I went to watch Swansea away there, and I just could not believe how good John McGinn was in the Championship. I was like, whoa, he is head and shoulders above everyone in this league. And then obviously they got promoted and he was always one of Villa's best players. But since Emery's come in, I just think he's gone up notches again. And obviously he is a player that's getting a bit older now. And, I know you support the Scotland national team, Nick, but quite a player that's perhaps not that fashionable. But I love watching John McGinn play, and Unai Emery seems to have made him even better, which is great. And I think that's, like you said, Guillem, from everything I read about him and the way he speaks, he does put in crazy amount of hours behind the scenes, and everyone says he's a bit of an obsessive and, first in, last out and all that. So, yeah, and he seems, again, from what people have said, and I know you've probably got to know him a bit more, he seems just like a really nice man to me as well. So I really hope he continues to do well, and this bad spell, which, like you said, Guillem, is it really a bad spell? It's a few games. I hope it ends, because I just really like him.
Yeah, he's got all that. But as well as being a coach, he's a leader of people, of project. He is not scared of surrounding himself with people that will challenge him. He's at the forefront of coaching as a methodology that has to do with a huge amount of analysis, a huge amount of detail, and he's still learning. That was interesting that to hear that. So in a conversation we had during the year, because I was there practically every week at the training ground and following Aston Villa closely. In one of the chats, he said, "Do you know who I'm learning from? Eder Sarabia of Elche.
Oh, cool.
They were in the second division. Okay, and so he's still got that hunger and he's he molds his idea to adapt. And although in this bad start of the season, or not great start of the season, he went for, instead of moving from whatever he was proposing to the team in the last 2 years and a half, he stayed on more of the same. And with more of the same, he hopes to get out of that stumble. But 3 wins suggest that he got it right again.
And Eder Sarabia as well, another Basque coach.
Yeah. And again, that was an interesting and important part of the book. I needed to know what is it that they do, because when you talk to them, they said, "No, we've got nothing in common." No, come on, there are things in common. But perhaps the job of the writer is to actually put those things in common and present it to them, and then, okay, that yes. So I did that, and I put it to Eder this morning, and he agreed that a bunch of things that coincides with all of them makes them a particular breed that can go out and succeed as they all doing.
Yeah, because it's always when we look at that, especially that little area. Is it? I'm going to completely butcher this now, so I do apologise. But is it Guipúzcoa in the Basque Country?
Yeah, the smallest province in the whole of Spain.
And it's Emery, it's Alonso, it's Teta, I think it was. Iriola at Bournemouth. There must be just something in the water there, surely. Like, I couldn't name you.
Lillo. The list is Paco Yestaran, Unai, of course. Now it's great, and it's a mixture of things. But in brief, they have got a great sense of community, and in a community, you tend to respect the leaders. You tend to your eldest. So respect for something that's bigger than you, either the thing that gets them together as a community or those leaders. That goes very well when they go to a club. They don't want to be the number one figure. They know that there is something bigger than that. The history of Aston Villa or the fans of Aston Villa, for instance, in the case of Unai. They are very competitive. They're all very sporty. And if you love sports and do sports, you are competitive. You just don't want to lose at anything. Who does sport just to entertain yourself? So they get that as well. Hard workers, they sit in their parents, and modest enough to know that unless you work really hard and adapt and learn, you don't come out of the mountains of the Basque Country. You stay there. To actually beat those mountains, you have to just have all that knowledge and all that hunger to learn. All that plus more is what makes them special. Yes.
And also, I remember a couple of years ago, and his name's cropped up a few times, and forgive me, I think his first name's Mikel, but is it Mikel Echari, who is like...
Mikel Echari, yes,
like
the guru of this group.
Exactly. He's like this coach that's been working with like a local FA for, I think it's like 30 years, maybe longer, and he's in his 70s now, and I think he may have just retired, but hasn't really retired. And his name crops up a lot as like a teacher. He's, he seems to be.
I went to see him in hospital. He was having a hip operation, and then he had it like 2 days earlier. And then he's like, "Come on, sit here." And he got his computer out, and that was it. That was 2 hours of my life gone, learning about what he was doing and what he wanted to do, and da. So as you say, that's the exact description. He's retired, but not really.
And I've got to just very quickly mention, because it'd be rude of me not to, I did see Unai Emery in another interview say one of his first great managerial influences was, as they call him in Spain, John Benjamin Toshak, who's obviously, as a Welshman, bit of a legend and a Swansea fan. So
yeah, he got an homage, didn't he, recently at Real Sociedad, and fairly so. He changed a lot of things in Spanish football. The 4-2-3-1 formation was he brought it in, and he's remembered very, very fondly both at Real Madrid and at Real Sociedad. I visited him at COVID time, and we had this long chat, which I put on camera. It's in my YouTube channel, where he could have been. It's like you don't need to ask him anything. He just talks, and everything he says is of an era, a lot of it, but certainly, it's history of a Spanish football. Is a pleasure to listen to John. He brought to go full circle. He was brought to Revista a few times, and every time I had to say, John, this is television. You need to just go sharp. Yeah, no problem. Nah. It's like we got to go. We got to go on a break. Nah, but he just will talk. But because he's got such a big figure, he was invited over and over again, and it was always a pleasure.
He obviously had a coaching influence in Spain, but also a linguistic one, because he taught the Spanish about pigs flying.
Yes, exactly. He added to our vocabulary. Yes.
Oh no, definitely. And I think you can see, sort of that yearn for having those teachers around you, because obviously Aston Villa have also just appointed Roberto Alabi as I think he's the operation football director, replacing Monchi there as well. So again, you wouldn't, put such a big confidant of Unai Emery there if you weren't going to back him for a very long time. Maybe just couple final questions for you, Guillem. One on the book, one on maybe a personal level, and we can link this back to Unai Emery as well. Obviously, he's the owner or co-owner of a historic club, Real Union, back in the Basque Country. We all know your associations with Biggleswade. Do you ever get to talk tactics or trade stories as influences around the top of a football club? Any links there potentially in a future friendly, maybe?
Well, Igor Emery, who's his brother, spent time with Biggleswade United, learning a little bit how he worked. He was doing a master's in London and about sports business, I think. And he knew of what I was doing at Biggleswade United, so he said, "Can I come in?" And he joined board meetings. We were at a primitive stage compared to what we are now, but still, he had a great time taking notes, whatever. I think he was preparing himself for what was coming, and now he's the chairman at Real Union. Unai is the owner, and he comes in and tells everybody how it goes, and they just wait for him to go, and then they just do whatever they can, which is not the same.
Yeah.
But he pushes them. So no, he knows I'm the chairman of a football club, and there's that thing about Unai, and those that do that, I think straight away they're good people. But then I found out that they actually are. They ask, "How is the club doing?" And then I do my speech, and it's a genuine interest. Maybe last 10 seconds, but whatever. They are in their own world. They don't want to be disrupted, but they still feel that you're in football. You give hours to football for free, grassroots, amateur football. They've got a lot of respect for that, and Unai and Rafa Benitez and Enzo Maresca and Mikel Arteta, they've always said, if you need anything, just let us know. And of course, the event at the Wheaton Arms will share the money that will come in between the Birmingham Children's Hospital and Biggleswade United as part of my yearly work to bring income to the club. That's what we're doing it for as well.
I'm going to clip that bit and play that to my wife so I can get a pass to go down to Birmingham to attend this event, because 2 days afterwards I've got to go to Madrid I'm going to Guadalajara, just outside of Madrid, to go meet the president of the club there through my other podcast, El Pozo. So I will use as a good excuse it's for charity, and not just to shake hands with yourself, Guillem.
Brilliant. No, I hope you can make it. There'll be books, signed books, and they will auction and raffle Dibu's gloves and Matika's boots and Tielemans boots and signed, shared by the players, signed, shared by Unai and the staff. So, like always, with me, when I do something, I do it like proper. It's a big
Yeah,
thing happening.
definitely. Yeah. And ahead of that event as well, I suppose the second question I really wanted to ask you is, just as a summary, what can we expect, from reading Rise events? I know you've touched on it, so slightly to get that 360-degree view, but is it generally that appreciation of what Unai Emery and Aston Villa are building, and sort of like, does it lead to the bigger picture here, or are we talking just about the exploits, I suppose?
No, there was a lot of stories of last season, but it's not the story of last season. It's a story of Aston Villa right now. The relationship between people, there's a big Spanish contingent. How did they adapt? Who worked on the adaptation? What were the difficulties they were facing? How does Unai works? What really is his methodology? People talk that he's a coach or that he's obsessive, but really, what else? And who does he work with? Who are these people that are coming, mini Unais that come with him everywhere? So you can read it as a collection of stories, anecdotes, things that you don't normally see from behind the scenes, or you can see it as a picture of first of all, a human being that is making the most out of what he's got, of his talent, of his leadership qualities, and secondly, how a club like Aston Villa is trying to made that table of 6 a big table of 7, and how difficult that is. But what are the challenges? So you can read it as an Aston Villa fan, you can read it as a football fan, as a coaching expert, even because there's details there that tells you how Unai works. And as always with my books, they're not really football books. They people books, and they story books, and try to create more literature than a football book as per se.
Absolutely, and it's just been payday as well, so I've just clicked buy now in my basket, and then I'm going to go downstairs, pour my wife a nice big glass of wine, and say, "Hey, there's an event down in Birmingham on the 15th. See how we can go from there." I appreciate for you guys. It's probably a little bit later than it is here in the UK. So we'll let you get back to your plans. Thank you so much for joining us, Guillem. It has been an absolute pleasure and honour, and it's a pinch yourself moment for me personally. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for the love to Spanish football, to Revista, and to everything I do that I know you follow closely. So good to see you, Matt, and good to see you, Nick.
Yeah, thank you, Guillem. It's also a pleasure. And just to bring it back, go full circle to what I mentioned at the start, Nick. I said I'm going to watch Recreativo Huelva this weekend. They are playing Lorca Deportivo. Mm-hmm. Do you know the link?
No, don't say it.
I don't think I do.
Don't say it. Put the question and get the comments to answer it.
There's the expert advice there, isn't it? So yeah, we'll definitely do that. Well, okay, Matt, thank you very much for joining us, and enjoy Huelva this weekend. I know you're going to send us maybe El Partido en Directo as well, potentially. Awesome, and I'll also point people towards the magazine, which is aptly named after the program we've all been loving over games. So we call it Revista El Partido. It's a digital magazine you can read. It's got stories about Maradona, about David Silva in Eibar, and my trip to Yekla as well, which was always fun. So go and read Patreon too. But for now, I'll say thank you to everybody for listening at home. We'll see you later. Hasta luego.